Olas Media.
Olas Media presents Dreaming Big, Working Hard, hosted by Assemblymember David Alvarez. Real stories, real progress, and a deep dive into the issues shaping our future.
Hi, I'm David Alvarez, and today we're having a wonderful conversation about education. You know, I get asked a lot about what education means to me, and the truth is that I share with people is that I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the education opportunities that I've had. That's why I'm so passionate about this issue. That's why I work on this issue on a daily basis in my day job, my work in Sacramento as a legislator, as chair of the budget committee on education. How can we provide more opportunities so that students like myself, who maybe were the first in their family to have the opportunity to go to college, who are an English language learner as I was, maybe a student who lives in poverty as I did, who had parents who did not have higher education. How do we make sure that more of those students have access to education so they can pursue their dreams, their goals, and pursue the opportunities that this country provides? And so this is a topic that matters a lot to me because of that reason. And so I'm really, really excited today to be talking about education with someone who I get a chance to talk about education on a regular basis, who's doing amazing work in this space. Today, I'm talking to my wife, Xochitl Alvarez, who works with first-generation students who, like her and like me, are the first in their family who are on that trajectory to go to college, who have parents who have high dreams and aspirations for their kids and work really hard in order to provide those opportunities. These kids are all low income. She works at a program called Nativity Prep Academy. It's a middle school. And she works in the graduate support division, which is getting the kids prepared and on their way to college. She's been recognized for her work. She's in her 20 plus years now of doing this work. And so I'm really excited that I get a chance to talk to her about that, the work she's doing, and also just generally in California and in education. What can we do better to make sure that more kids have the same opportunity? So I want to welcome Xochitl. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to be here to talk about this issue that I know you care about a lot as well. I'd love for you to share with you a little bit more about what you do in your role and let people know exactly what your work is about.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel very special to be your first guest, and I'm excited for your journey starting this podcast, because when you shared that you wanted to do this, I said, oh, that sounds really interesting, and to have these conversations. So I'm the director of graduate support at Nativity Prep. And as a director of graduate support, I am fortunate that I can work with middle school students starting when they enter in sixth grade all the way until they graduate from college, and sometimes even beyond that time, because when they're ready to find their careers to apply to grad school, they always come back to us. So I get to work and see 10-year-olds growing into successful, thriving 30-year-olds. So it's a big blessing to be able to do this work with them. And the way that I do this is starting to work with the middle school students to talk about career, college, and then high school. So I kind of work my way backwards with them, because first we talk about what can you be? Like, what are the careers? What do you dream about? What do you want to be when you grow up? And then we work our way back to see, what do you need to do to be able to get to the place that you want to be? And so that's how we have the success that we have, just starting to work with them at a young age, and to really start them to get to think about how they see themselves as a 30-year-old and older than that. Yeah,
I think that's really interesting, because I think back maybe to that age, when I was that age, when we were that age, we were in middle school together. And I think, I don't know that we had a lot of those conversations, not at that age. When we went to high school, I think we talked more about college. But one of the things that I think is unique is like you said, you start to get them to think and sort of see themselves in that. And one of the things that I talk to people a lot about when we talk about higher education and where people see themselves is that exposure is so important. And if you don't see it, you can't be it, is a phrase that I like to share with people, because unless you know what's out there, you don't really know what is out there for you. And so one of the things you do is you talk about those potential careers, the future careers, and then how they can get there. And so is that an accurate assessment? I mean, compared to other perhaps middle schoolers that you learn about, like, is that a very different and unique component that you've taken to the program?
I think a lot of people share that, they weren't thinking about or talking about what they wanted to be when they were, 11, 12 years old. So I think it is pretty unique, the work that we are doing. I think more educators are realizing the importance of speaking about careers at an earlier age. I mean, I remember my parents always told me, you're going to go to college. They didn't know how I was going to do it. They didn't know what I was going to study. They always just told me, you are going to college. And the belief that they had in me that I would go to college, I think that motivated me because they believed that I could do it. And so that's kind of the same thing that I want to share and pass along to my students, the belief that I believe in them, and therefore, because I believe in them, that they should believe in themselves, and they all have the potential to be able to achieve those dreams.
And I think that's really important because we still see, whether you're an English language learner or someone from a low-income family or, from a particular community, you still see those barriers out there. I mean, we see them in the statistics. We know who's going to college and who isn't. And there is a divide. And so I think some of the work that we probably need to do as a society is to ensure that we are starting with people with kids at a very young age, and get them to sort of start thinking about what their future could look like. And like you said, expose them to careers, because if you don't get exposed to those careers, then you also don't know what's out there for you. And I think that's one of the things that is changing, or I could say evolving in the education space. Just a couple of weeks ago, the governor produced the master plan for career education, which is sort of a revisiting of the master plan for education from the 1960s, which sort of created our university system with the UC and CSU and our community colleges. But it's a revisit because the world is changing and people need to be prepared to enter the workforce. And that means any number of things. It could be a certificated program with a couple of years of college education, or a 4-year degree, or something beyond a 4-year degree, because those are careers that we also need people. So I think that's really interesting. One of the things that I've been talking to people about and trying to really better understand is, do we need to adapt to the new reality of the world, where learning skills, particular specific skills, need to happen over the course of your lifetime? So lifetime learning. The technology obviously is changing all the time, and so learning and reskilling yourself or learning new skills is one of the things that I wonder if we need to start to think differently about how we educate people, and not in the traditional sense of, you've got to go to high school and then you've got to go do 4 years of college and get a degree. And then if you're going to be a professional in some specific field, then you got to go to get a master's or a PhD or a medical degree. And I'm wondering if something that I've heard a lot about is competency-based learning, which is where you learn about a subject, you become really well-versed, and you understand the subject matter, and you master it. What are your thoughts about changing how we educate students, or does the traditional model still work for everybody?
I think we're educating students right now for jobs that don't even exist. So, the 10-year-olds, the 11-year-olds there's going to be jobs that we don't even know are going to be happening, especially in the STEM world and in technology. And we have to be aware that we're also not competing, but yes, competing with technology as far as social media and YouTube and all of these, activities that are very stimulating, and maybe kids think this is easier. It's easier. I can just be a YouTuber and I can, this is a good way to make money. So I think that we do need to meet them halfway and engage them in those ways that are interesting to them, so that they are interested in hearing from older people, and maybe, I think, a mix of the traditional education along with growing with the students, because we know that the AI and ChatGPT, all of that's not going away. We need to teach the students how to use it correctly and how to not plagiarize. So I think as long as we can embrace it and really use it so that the students are able to benefit from them and learn from it, I think that's the best way to approach it.
Yeah, that reminds me, and I do want to talk more about that, but it reminds me of the bill from last year that I know I talked to you about, which was trying to create bans or more limitations on the use of cell phones because in school settings, because of the distractions that it creates. And not to mention social media applications and the research that has demonstrated that the use of social media, particularly for kids under the age of 16, has a tremendous impact. I know that we've talked to our daughter Isel about, and we don't allow social media apps for her yet. She's not 16 yet. In fact, she didn't get her first cell phone until she was 15 and in high school, because we wanted to make sure that we were avoiding the use of that technology. And I know that a lot of parents struggle with that. Do you see that some of your families that you work with, some of the students that you work with, have a struggle with technology and social media just generally and impacting their education?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the majority of my students, even the middle school students, have a cell phone. And, the students are there from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, really, they don't need a cell phone. But sometimes they don't know how to manage those interactions outside of school. When we were their age, if someone was bothering us, they were bothering us and we were getting bullied during the school day. But the bullying and the harassment continues online. And so it can be happening all night long where people are talking about other people. So it is a negative thing for a lot of people. So we need to teach children how to manage it and how to use it, because it is also a good way to hear about opportunities and events and scholarships, but they need to know how to use it in a positive manner, because it also, seeing a lot of these images of people who maybe they want to look like or they aspire to, that also impacts their health and how they see, and their mental health, how they see themselves and how they see each other. So I think that parents do need to be able to manage and see what children are doing online so that, we can support them, because we can't stop them, but we can support them and we can guide them and better instruct them.
What do you think teachers, administrators, people who work at schools would say about, or how would they feel about cell phone bans? I mean, how do classrooms manage that today?
I mean, we're not allowed to have cell phones in the classroom right now. So if a phone rings in the classroom, they're surprised, like, whose phone is ringing. But I know in other schools, maybe they're allowed to use them during lunchtime or after school or before school.
And you think that's a good balance of allowing them during those times, or?
I'm not sure. I mean, sometimes I know that some students, because they're not allowed to use it during the school day, they might take advantage of taking their phone, even though they're not supposed to, taking it with them to the restroom and checking comments during that time, or sending each other messages during that time so that they're able to then check it later. So there does need to be a balance. But students also need to learn how to not be so dependent on a phone. They have devices all the time that they can use. They're the tablets, the laptops. Like, we don't need so many things that are distracting them all the time.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the families, the kids that you work with are first generation. Just for anyone who might not know what that means, they're the first in their family to go to college. And you're working specifically and exclusively with this group of students. Obviously the work that I try to do statewide, I'm trying to make sure that we serve all students in all of California. But I do take a particular interest and focus in first generation students, because what that does in terms of opening up opportunities, the doors to opportunities when you go to higher education, when you get a degree. I know that I wouldn't be, and I think you probably feel the same, wouldn't be in the middle class. We wouldn't be part of the middle class if it weren't for our college education that opened the doors to a lot of opportunities. And I still think that's the pathway for people. And so I want to make sure that those doors maintain open. And so I want to hear from you. What are the challenges now, besides the obvious ones, when you don't know how to navigate the system and, applications and FAFSAs, and that's been changing over the last couple of years, which is the financial aid application, the college application. There were SAT requirements for testing, then there weren't. How is the world changing in terms of providing first generation students access, more access, or is it becoming more challenging? Is it more difficult? What's happening in that space?
With the internet, I think that there is so much access to so much information. So if a student can't go visit a college campus, they can do a virtual tour. So there is opportunities in that way. So sometimes we can't make excuses. You say, well, I can't learn about it, or I don't know about it. Now they don't have an excuse. They can look online. That is a resource that they have that we didn't have when we were applying to college. So that is an easier way for them to do it. There are challenges because it is more expensive to go to college now than it was when we were going to college. So that is a real challenge that families face, because they might be afraid to allow their children to take out a student loan, because then they're worried about how they're going to pay it back. So I know I always talk to you about the importance of the Cal Grant and funding more of these college students so that they do have access to more funding. Because if they get admitted to a school that is not in San Diego, they can go and they get funding for their tuition. But the expensive part is that they can't live on campus. So then because they can't live there, then they can't go to school there. It's just not feasible for the family.
That's a really interesting point. You and I both born and raised in San Diego. We went to two different universities, but both here in San Diego. I know for myself, I never saw myself going somewhere else to go live. I think there's a cultural issue there. I was, as you know, with my parents at that time, living when they were living. And so I never saw myself going away. I kind of felt like I'd be almost like abandoning my family. And so I think there's a cultural barrier that exists also for first gen students who feel like, okay, my parents are sacrificing a lot. Like how am I still part of the family unit without? Then again, there's folks who had the experience you did, which you always wanted to go to college, and that could have meant going somewhere else. One of the things we're working on here, as you know very well, is another university option in Chula Vista in the South Bay. And I think that matters a lot because San Diego State University and UC San Diego, the two flagship institutions of our two university systems, are very impacted. Students can't get in. It's very competitive. And what happens is a lot of our families who are like from the South Bay area, from the Chula Vista, National City, San Isidro, Otay Mesa area, they don't see themselves as, again, I think there's a lot of cultural ties, like they want to stay home. And so UCSD and San Diego State are their two options, but they can't get in because it's so impacted. And so that's why we're working on this university concept for Chula Vista. How are your students and families? I know you have a lot of students who have gone away and they've been successful, but do you see any of those difficulties for students who do leave home for the first time, who nobody in their family has ever done this before? Do you have those experiences?
We do have some of those experiences, but we start talking to the parents and the students about going away to college and being open to that possibility, from the time that they're in sixth grade. And we continue those conversations and we talk about the opportunities that they could have at other universities if they do go live off campus somewhere at another university. So we do talk about that. So it's something that the families have been hearing it for a while. So we hope that by having those conversations early and often, that they are open to it. And when parents say, oh, I don't want you to go far away, or I don't want you to leave home, I always tell them, this is what you want from them. This is why you brought them to this school. This is, you have to be open to this because this is where the opportunity is going to be available to them. So you have placed them in this path. Now let them open up their wings and let them fly, let them go. Because, and I know that when it's time for my kids to do the same thing, I'll probably be sad and I'll cry, but I will push them out of the nest. And, hopefully
it's going to be a difficult time for sure. Once our kids decide to do that. But I think the way we're talking to them about it is we want those to be options. We're not pushing them out, right? We're just telling them you can look elsewhere for other opportunities. And so I do hope they take advantage of that. One of the things I get asked, I was just with a group of students on Friday with Millennial Tech Middle School talking about just about career and all that. And one of the kids asked me one of the regrets that I had, if I had a regret, what it would be. And I don't know that I've shared this with you, but I share with almost every student that I meet with. A lot of my interns, when I have one-on-ones with them and coffees, I share my biggest regret was not going away and doing an abroad program when I had the opportunity. It was like my third or fourth year in college at San Diego State, and it was in the psychology. My degree's in psychology, so the psychology department had a semester abroad in London, and I would have gotten all of the classes that I needed to graduate, and I never did it. And so it's one of the biggest regrets. So I tell every young person, go and do an abroad program. And so to your point of when our kids, when they're there, you have to walk the talk, right? If I think it's good for other kids, it's going to be good for my kids to go and have those experiences. Do you have students who have had abroad programs? They're first generation students.
Yes.
So tell me about what they've shared.
Yes, they have had the opportunity to study abroad. And that is one thing that I also wish that I would have taken advantage of. But I don't know why I was in such a hurry. I thought I have to graduate in 4 years. Now I tell my students, it's okay to take your time. When there is no timeline, no one's telling you that you have to graduate in 4 years from college. And I do encourage them to study abroad. So they have been to Spain, to places in Mexico, to Peru, so Germany. So they have been to a lot of places, and they have been able to expand their horizons just by going to those places. And their college scholarships and their grants cover it. So they should definitely take advantage of it.
Tell me a little bit more about the impact that you have had at your school, not just you, but your program at the school has had. I know you just yesterday you're celebrating what you call the 11 years.
The 11-year commitment.
11-year commitment. Talk to us about what that 11-year commitment, because really that could be true for any one of us with kids in middle school. It's start to get us thinking, okay, yeah, we want to worry about college, but there are steps along the way. And that's what you do with the students. Tell me about that 11-year commitment and what those foundational steps are for kids who otherwise, if you look at the statistics, if you're first generation or low income, like your students are, the statistics aren't with you that you're going to make it and graduate from college, yet you're seeing pretty significant success rates. Tell me about that.
So, we have a class for the students starting in the 6th grade. And so they start working on their resumes. They start working on scholarship applications, even as 6th graders. And they research a career that they're interested in. And then they present everything that has to do with the career. And also, even if they're the wages that they'll make, if there's going to be job openings in that career that they have selected. So they present that to the school. And then
I'm going to interrupt you there, because I think as you talk about this is something every parent can do. Everybody who's got a kid.
Yes, I'll put a plug in for California Career Zone.
Okay.
There's a lot of information on that website. So anyone can access that website and find information, really easy, accessible information about any career.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say in addition to that is there are people who actually pay for services like the one that you provide free of charge to all the students who attend your school. But there are now an entire industry on getting kids sort of prepared to go to college and make them competitive to go to college. But I think it's really important that you talk about the 11 years, that in the formative years of middle school, which I've always thought are really formative years for young people, you start talking and exposing them. I think a lot of us don't think about having those conversations. We think maybe, kids that age, they can't be thinking about, their future lives and what they're going to do. But you probably have the opposite experience. They probably are interested in some of these things.
Yes. And you can even look at budget. So we also talk about what will it be like to live on your own and independently. And through that website, we're also able to use the budget planners so that they can see themselves and as young adults and owning a house and owning a car. So all the things that they need to be working on. And we also talk about the education that they will need. So that's why we research the colleges that they might want to go to. And then, they have different opportunities with the high schools that they will be applying to. And we support them through the time that they are in high school with different workshops once a week. We expect them to return to to Nativity Prep for their workshops as high school students so that we can continue to work with them and support them and continue to be engaged and just make sure that they're also a part of their high school community, that they're getting the grades that they are going to need to open up the more doors as possible. So I tell them the better your GPA, the more doors you will have open to different opportunities. And then we even visit them when they go off to college. We visit them at their college campuses and we send them care packages. So, we just really continue to support them throughout the time. And they always know that we're going to be there for them, that they can always come back. And if, you've seen those posters where like, what does success look like? And people think it's one straight trajectory, but it's not. There are some obstacles that the students will have to face. And if they have to take a break or if they pause, I think that they always feel like they can always come back and that we will always be there to support them. And I'm never going to ask, well, what happened? Why didn't you do all the things that you needed to do? Like if a student comes back and says that maybe they're not doing as well as they wanted to, I always say, okay, so we pause right here. So now where do we want to go? Yeah. So we always talk about what's the next step. We never go back because that's not helpful.
One of the things that I'm obviously in a lot of conversations, I serve on the education committee at the assembly. So every law that gets proposed in California every single year goes through the committee. I get to vet it and discuss it, debate it, and vote on it. And then obviously also chairing the budget committee, work on the money that gets set aside to support our schools. And one of the things that I am curious about is, what is the true level of investment we need to make for our schools, particularly in middle school, which is such a challenging time? Your school model is very much a small classroom model, which is not typical of your middle school experience. I mean, our kid who went through middle school the last 3 years, classes were 30 kids and more. And not to mention all the support systems that have to exist. And so I'm always having this conversation with people about if we really wanted to make sure, particularly that the students that are the most challenged for a variety of circumstances, whether it's because you're first generation, you're an English learner, you're homeless or a foster kid, or any other number of reasons, what is the investment we truly should be making in order to make sure that that student has that pathway? You talk about you have classes from 8 to 5. That is not a traditional school model. Kids are in school for a little less than that. I know you also have summer programs where learning continues, because we know that we've heard that there's a summer slide. The kids lose a lot of learning through the 3 months often that people have off during the summer. Your school model does not do that. And so I'm just curious, of all of the things that you do, and it's kind of an unfair question because you also have a lot of parent involvement, which I know we all want to see in schools, more parent engagement and involvement. And unfortunately, it drops off after elementary school because kids get awkward and when they're teenagers and parents and kids don't, get along as well. But your school does all of that. If you were to pick one or maybe two things where if we can invest more at large, at scale in California to make sure that students were better supported starting in the middle school grades, what do you think that investment should be?
I think talking about careers in college at an early age, starting in 6th grade, would benefit a lot of students because even with parents who want their children to go to college and they have these dreams for them, sometimes their parents don't know what conversations to have with them. They like you said, they can ask, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And then you just kind of leave it at that. So I think those are sometimes where teachers or other administrators can come in and teach some of those classes and talk to the students about their futures. And not all of the students are planned to go to college or will go to college, but the reality is that everyone is going to need some type of post-secondary education. Mm-hmm. So that's the most important thing, that the students know that after they graduate from high school, they need to learn something else. Like they need to learn some skill, because a lot of the jobs that are, that we have now, they're going away because a computer can do it. Or, now you go to the store and you check yourself out. So there's a lot of jobs that are not going to exist. So that's why they do need to have some kind of post-secondary education, whatever it is, some post-secondary education.
I don't know why it's provocative or maybe even sometimes controversial that we do things a little bit differently in education. That, for example, community colleges should be places where people can get degrees of some sort. Maybe not all degrees, but some degrees. We have what are called college deserts, which is we don't have access to a 4-year university everywhere in the whole corner, every corner of California. And so I believe strongly that community colleges, particularly the ones in our own backyard here, Southwestern College, should have the opportunity to offer degrees that are advanced degrees, not just transfer degrees, but advanced degrees, in order to get people the skills that they need to get the jobs that are still in high demand. Healthcare, for example, is an area where there is a lot of need, and we are not producing the healthcare professionals that we need. And so I think community colleges should do that. It's a provocative, it's sometimes controversial. We have attempted to do some legislation and laws around that. There's a lot of pushback. What are your thoughts on our community college system? You've had some students who've come through community college. Some have gone straight to a 4-year institution. What are your thoughts on doing education a little bit differently?
I mean, I always tell my students that everyone should complete a community college application because, you know, when they come home for the summer, they can always take 1 or 2 courses at the community college to help them advance. So if they, you know, especially if they don't have an internship or a job that they're working on, they should be taking advantage of their summer and learning something during that time. And I know that there are some community colleges that do offer some bachelor's degrees. And I think that if the community college is able to do it and it has the ability to provide these bachelors, I think that we should take advantage of it. You know, some of the universities are pretty expensive, and and also more of the non-traditional students, maybe students that have families that they're already taking care of or are older students, they would definitely benefit from these resources because they're probably working. They might not be able to afford it because they have a family to take care of. So it should be something that we consider, especially in those majors that have a high demand and are going to have more job opportunities, because we also need more people to be skilled in a lot of the STEM fields. Because as we know, the way that we're going, if we're not educating more students, we're not going to have the workforce to do some of the jobs that are needed and that we're going to require. So we need to invest more in these students so that they are able to obtain a bachelor's degree if that's what they desire. And if the community college is able to do it, I think it's a great place for students to learn. So
I semi-regularly throw ideas out at you to like get your thoughts, like, oh, if we do this, like this is one we haven't talked about at length, but I think your response is pretty clear that it makes sense. Like we should allow community colleges. But again, like I said earlier, believe it or not, there's some hesitation to do that from just different sort of corners of the world, people who might not be. So.
And maybe the universities might feel like the community college is stepping on their toes, and that's exactly some of that feeling.
But your point is exactly the right one. We have a demand for workforce, and we need to be producing those workforce. And so when they can't get into a UC or a CSU, their next available, in my opinion, the next available affordable higher education that we have to offer publicly in California is a community college. And so we need to make sure that they have the tools available in order to provide. You obviously are also very aware of the work we're doing with Southwestern College to increase those opportunities through our Chula Vista work. And it's, as I've shared with people, there's a lot of little pieces that need to come together. There's a reason why it's taken 30 plus years and we still don't have a university in Chula Vista. It's because you got to stay focused. You got to stay really attentive to all the little things that you need to do. And oftentimes they're really unsexy and nobody really knows what they are. I've got couple of bills almost every year that are pieces and components of making sure that we're on the pathway to a university in Chula Vista. But I will tell you, Southwestern College is at the center of all that. And as someone who was not a community college student full time, I did take a couple of courses and a couple of summers. I have come to value community college much more now in my role because they provide the education, as you said, to the non-traditional students, to the working parents, to people who have jobs, who other things happen in life and now they want to get back into education. And so I think we need to start thinking towards our community colleges and centering the work that we do in higher education around them a lot more. And that's why we're doing the work that we're doing in Chula Vista with the university. What are your thoughts on this idea that we have of this university, which would be a combined, UC, CSU, community college, Mexican universities coming together to provide opportunities? And as someone who's been in education and you send kids along more traditional paths, if you will, towards higher education, what are your thoughts of this untraditional model that we're working on?
I think it's exciting. There's going to be challenges because if there's so many cooks in the kitchen, there's always going to be challenges. But I think it's exciting and it's going to provide options for the students to be able to take the courses or the path that they desire. Because if all those institutions are in one campus, then they can take advantage of multiple areas of the institution. So hopefully the colleges are able to work together and work well together and support one another and not see each other as competition, but as allies that can work together to produce excellent students to be a part of the workforce.
That's what we're hoping for.
We'll be right back with more insight, more ideas, and more voices driving change. Stay tuned to Dreaming Big, Working Hard.
Mixed Grounds Coffee, founded in 2020, is where culture brews community. Located in San Diego's Logan Heights district, this Vietnamese-owned micro-roastery brings you the world's finest beans roasted in small batches. Mixed Grounds is proud to present I Just Wanted to Push Record on the Olas Media Network, celebrating arts, community, and culture.
Hey, it's Daniel from Beyond the Doors. We're super excited to be a part of the Olas Media Network, recording right here in San Diego, alongside some amazing podcasts. There's a host of wonderful shows from all types of genres for the true San Diegan who wants to know more about local officials and their journey to success. There's Dear San Diego with my good friend, Tony Monolatos. Basically, like real estate, there's a little something for all walks of life. You won't want to miss it. So head over to olasmedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow or subscribe while you're there. Now, let's get back to the show.
Welcome back to Dreaming Big, Working Hard. Let's keep the momentum going.
So tell me about the actual building of the universities and how that's all going to happen. Like, where is that funding coming from and how is that all happening?
Yeah, we need to invest in education facilities generally. A lot of the facilities were built in the 1960s, and we see that out in the community. So I was proud to support Sweetwater High School District down in the South Bay to invest more into some of their facilities for their schools that are in most need of repairs. And then Southwestern College also had a bond measure on the ballot, which I also supported, and the voters agreed with us. And so they both now have money to build new facilities. Wow. And particularly Southwestern College is looking at our university site as how could they potentially place a Southwestern College building on that site so they could be part of the university efforts. And that's why the integration of all the universities and the colleges is so important, and the collaboration is so important. In addition to that, I have a bill right now that is going to work through the legislative process, which is looking to put a bond before the voters of the state of California in the next year's election in 2026, where we would all vote as Californians to see if we want to invest in the UCs, CSUs, and our community colleges as well, because UCs and CSUs also have a lot of facilities that are outdated, that need to be improved. And in addition to student housing, those are all things that are currently in our ballot measure our bill, which will end up becoming a ballot measure, go before the voters as a proposition once it's all finished and voted on by the legislature. But again, we need to invest in new technologies and upgraded space. As you were talking about earlier, without students having the technology and the skill sets that they need, they cannot compete out in the workforce. And so that means our classrooms have to be equipped with the right types of technologies and the right type of learning environments that then they can apply all that to the real world.
And can you tell me why was nursing selected as the first major for the Southwestern College?
Yeah, nursing was one that was ranked as a top priority career that was in high demand and need of students or graduates. And this was all very done with a lot of thought. So we didn't just pick it randomly. There was a whole analysis that was done about looking at the San Diego region and looking at what the needs are. And the healthcare need just generally has a lot of demand for workforce. And nursing in particular is a program that already exists at San Diego State University. They wanted to grow it, but they are limited also in their space on their current campus. And Southwestern College has a nursing program at the community college level. And so it becomes what we call a 2+2. You do 2 years at community college and you do 2 years at the university level, and you graduate with a degree. And so it was, again, a matter of what are the careers that are in demand? What are we not producing enough graduates in? What kinds of careers? And nursing very quickly raised to the top. And in particular, because of the area, a community that's more diverse, which as our community becomes more diverse, our healthcare needs become more diverse. And so having culturally competent, prepared workforce, which Southwestern College is known for it being a more diverse campus, is what was a natural fit. And that's how we ended up with nursing, the first program that's going to open its doors probably in less than a year.
Do you think that college is still worth it?
Absolutely. Without a college degree, I know I wouldn't be where I am in terms of the opportunities that I've had. I think we need to look at it differently, though. I think we need to look at how do we create degrees that are based on competency. So that, in my mind, means we don't just look at the 4-year university model, but we look at how do we allow people to graduate as long as they understand the subject matter and become experts in that and get their degree using that model. I think we need to look at dual enrollment, which is something that's already, it's just picked up tremendously, which is where your student in high school can also take classes in college, community college. And how do we leverage that so that by the time students leave high school, they have significant amount of credits to apply towards their college that can expedite their college degree, bring down the cost. We also need to look at these partnerships like the one we have between Southwestern College and San Diego State, where what we call them is articulated pathways, so that they're working together and you're not just going to community college and taking classes, graduating, and then hoping that you get into a university. Instead, you have a very specific pathway and you're getting into that university, and you're going to get into that university the moment you begin your community college career. Those are all models that need to change. Degrees don't have to happen in 4 years. They can happen in 3 years. Again, it's sort of revisiting what our commitment is to producing the workforce that we need and how are we going to do that. And it doesn't have to only be a college degree, by the way. That's a bachelor's. There are certificated programs that are really important that pay really well, actually. And those programs need to be embedded into our higher education system as well.
That's what the San Diego Promise is also so important, because I think that really has facilitated for students just the time that they are in community college, and they're not lost, because a lot of the time students would just take classes and not really know what they were going to be doing. But now with the San Diego Promise, there's people that are there to support them and to guide them and to make sure that they will be able to finish in 2 years.
Yeah. So I know you have some questions that you've thought about or that people have frequently asked you about the work that I do. Would you like to share some of those?
Well, this one's for me.
Okay.
What's your as an assembly member, what's your proudest accomplishment so far?
Oh, wow. I think it definitely has to be getting Southwestern College and San Diego State University together to the table to have this for the first time have a bachelor's program in the South Bay. You can get a bachelor's degree in something in the South Bay, and it's the first time that we'll ever have that. That means access to higher education for a lot of kids. And it's a building block for what's to come with all of our university work that will follow all of this. And so I think had we not accomplished that, I don't know that we'd be talking about the reality of having a university campus in the South Bay. And so that's definitely a big accomplishment. Getting the building built where this is going to happen, which is in East Chula Vista, the first library in over 30 years. I got funding to do that in my very first few months, actually, in the legislature. That building is about to open its doors. It's an amazing facility where we're going to have a new library for the community space, but also the Chula Vista Entertainment company is moving in. So they're going to be doing some film and television work, which is kind of interesting and bringing a new industry to the South Bay. And so that investment is already yielding some dividends, including the nursing program that's going to be also held at that building. But we have more work to do.
One of the questions that people ask me about you is, did he want to be a politician ever since he was young?
Yeah, no. I think the answer to that, it is I did not. I studied psychology. I went into college as an undeclared major. I often say I stumbled upon college. My college journey history. You were definitely a part of it. But so I went in undeclared. I loved math. I thought I was going to teach math, and that's what I sort of started with. And then I found statistical analysis and data analysis in the psychology space, and I was really interested by that. And then I thought I'd be working as a school psychologist. I always wanted to sort of give back to the community. And it wasn't until my fellowship experience, which is why I also tell students and young people, do internships, because you never know what you're going to find. You never know that you're going to find interest in something that you maybe thought you never did. And because of my fellowship, when I got that experience in Sacramento, that's really what started my journey into government. And I realized that in public service, I found a lot of meaning and purpose, and it fulfilled me. And, I've sort of stuck with that since. And, so never thought of it. I'm naturally an introvert, and in politics, it's all about talking to people and being out all the time, which is not a natural thing for me. It's become a lot easier. But, as you know, sometimes I just go home and I just need like a 10-minute break because I'm always on. Because I always have to be very, open and talkative and social, which is again, not my nature. But it's really good work. I feel really satisfied, and I feel like there's more to be done. And so that's what inspires me to keep going.
And how does your faith play a role in the decisions that you make?
Faith is definitely important to the decisions that I make. I think I go back to my experience with the Ignatian exercises that I did, the spiritual exercises. As you remember, when I left office after serving on the San Diego City Council for 8 years, it was like 2 days after that I left on the retreat, 8 days of silence. And that was a real formative period for me. I learned a lot about just reflecting and praying and thinking about the decisions that I make. And so ever since then, I feel like in life, I've been able to make some decisions. What I always say is with a lot of peace, which means regardless of the outcome, regardless of whether I won because what I voted for was what won, or I lost, that wasn't going to matter. And so when I approach things in that way, which is I do that, 99% of the time, my faith is integral to allowing me to just keep going forward, because there are a lot of stumbles and there are things that you're not able to succeed in when you're in politics because you don't get your way. I'm one of 80 assembly members. I have to convince 40 others to support what I want to do, and that doesn't always happen. And so having the faith that what you're working on is still overall what's best for your community, and being able to overcome those challenges and the difficult moments is the only way to keep going in politics. You have to be hopeful to be in politics, because there are too many moments of despair, especially right now in our country. We're living in a lot of difficult moments. And if you don't have the hope that things will get better, then it would be a pretty miserable job. And as you know, I really enjoy the work that I do, even if it does mean being away so much from home. That's definitely the biggest sacrifice.
And okay, so question that my students ask me, and maybe you can word it so that an 11, 12-year-old can understand it. What does an assembly member do?
The best way, I think, to answer the question is an assembly member works on writing laws. I write laws for the state of California, and I help approve budgets of the taxes that people send to the state. Most importantly, in my case, I work on the budgets for education, our K through 12 system, TK through 12 system, and our university system, our college system, but also the social safety net, whether it's Medi-Cal or social services, things like mental health services for homeless, which has obviously been a big deal for the last several years. So it's two important jobs. One is writing laws and voting on laws that become laws in the state of California, and dictating where our $300+ billion budget, the dollars that we have in Sacramento, get spent in order to support people throughout California. I want to thank Xochitl for joining me today on the podcast and talking about education generally and about what's happening today and what the future looks like. I'm excited about the opportunity that we can see education in a different way, that we can challenge ourselves to do things differently, that we focus on the needs of California and the people who really need to make sure that our systems work for them, that higher education is an opportunity for them, that our community colleges are integrated with our universities, and that we are focused on producing educated workforce that's ready to enter the different careers that we need in order to be able to be competitive. You know, California is the 5th largest economy, not just because we have a robust system of higher education. And that means we got to keep investing in that. And we have to keep investing because of all the things you heard, because first generation kids, which there are still many of in California, English language learners, which there are still many of in California, homeless students, foster students, they are our future. And they are the ones with the most number of challenges. And we don't focus on them, we won't be able to make sure that workforce and that future exists. And if we don't build institutions like our Chula Vista University project and others throughout the state where there's college deserts, where kids don't have access to higher education, if we don't do that, then they won't have those opportunities that we all think that they should, in order to make sure that they're successful and therefore we're all successful. So this has been an amazing opportunity. I'm so happy and blessed to have shared today with Xochitl. I want to thank her for joining, and I want to thank you for listening in. As we go forward, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your questions. We're going to have conversations on all the topics that matter to Californians. So please submit your questions. You can find me on the socials at Alvarez SD. Submit your questions, and I'm happy to answer them and have that conversation with you in future podcasts. Until next time, remember to dream big and work hard.
Dreaming Big, Working Hard is hosted by California Assembly member David Alvarez. Follow on Instagram for more updates and behind-the-scenes content. To learn more or get involved, visit davidalvarez.com. This podcast has been recorded in San Diego, California, and proudly produced by OLAS Media, an IVC media company.
OLAS Media.